In honor of Women's History Month, welcome to the Women Leading Greater Good Wednesday series. My name is Dr. Angela Johnson, Managing Director of Alliance for Greater Works. And throughout the month of March, Alliance will be highlighting the achievements of 5 extraordinary and inspiring women through this educational series. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that Alliance's offices are located on land that is the ancestral homeland of the Kickapoo, Tawakoni, and Wichita. We honor and respect the many diverse Indigenous peoples still connected to this land and their cultural resilience. This series is being conducted virtually, so you may hear some background noises. We apologize now and ask that you bear with us as we all adjust to this new virtual world. As a 21-year-old nonprofit organization, Alliance has been developing leaders to uplift and transform communities so that all people have opportunities to thrive. And one of the ways that we do that is by developing women leaders and telling their stories. Today, we will be exploring the life of Wilma Mankiller, an inspiring activist, community developer, and principal chief of the Cherokee Nation. We have prepared a short video with 5 lessons we have learned from Chief Mankiller's extraordinary life. The video will be followed by a panel discussion with our esteemed guests, Chief Cheryl Smith of the Gina Band of Choctaw Indians, and Pamela Pam Iron, Executive Director of the American Indian Resource Center Incorporated and the Institute for Native Justice. We also have Mia Hernandez from the Alliance team serving as our tech person for today. So we just thank you all for joining us, and we'll take a look at that video now. What does it mean to lead an organization, a community, or a tribe? And what if you just happen to be the first female leader of a sovereign Indigenous nation? Leadership isn't just about telling people what to do. Leadership is about generating movement and creating a new future for the people you are connected to. A leader helps create more equitable communities because we all want to live in communities where we can be our best. Today, we will be introducing you to Principal Chief Wilma Mankiller, an activist, community developer, and Principal Chief of the Cherokee Nation. In honor of Women's History Month, welcome to the Women Leading Greater Good Wednesday series, an educational project of Alliance for Greater Works. Number 1, history is ours to build on. In 1955, at the age of 10, when Wilma Pearl Mankiller and her family accepted the U.S. government's offer to relocate from Oklahoma to San Francisco with the promise of a better job that never really materializes, it was a traumatic experience. But she knew that the Cherokee Nation had a government before there was a U.S. government, and therefore history was hers to build on. As a Mankiller, Chief Mankiller knew her last name was synonymous with being a guardian of the Cherokee people. Now in San Francisco, she felt completely alone in this busy modern world of phones, elevators, and high-rise buildings. Chief Mankiller would later recount, "My own story has meaning only as long as it is part of the overall story of my people. Despite everything that has happened to us, we have never given up and will never give up." Number 2, know yourself, know your friends. There is a richness in knowing yourself and knowing friends who struggle, work, or fight alongside you. While coming of age in San Francisco during the 1960s, Chief Mankiller was heavily influenced by the civil rights, Chicana, and the women's movements. In 1969, when Indigenous college students took over Alcatraz Island, her life changed. Alcatraz was a prison in the middle of San Francisco Bay, and the children who relocated to San Francisco from tribal lands are now college students. The college students find a law that says if the U.S. government has no use for land anymore, it again becomes indigenous property. A young Chief Mankiller and 4 of her brothers and sisters moved to Alcatraz with other indigenous college students. The Alcatraz Island occupation sparked the Native American indigenous rights movement, and as an activist, Chief Mankiller learned how to organize a community for the common good, work with the federal government regarding land and treaty rights, and she learned how to write federal grant proposals that received funding. In 1977, after divorcing her Ecuadorian husband, she packed up her knowledge and her 2 daughters and made her way home to Mankiller Flats, the ancestral land she grew up on in what is now known as Oklahoma. Number 3, lead from the heart. Armed with the knowledge and the experiences of an activist and a name that was synonymous with guardianship, Chief Mankiller led from her heart by asking people how she could help them overcome abject poverty. The people responded by saying they wanted indoor plumbing. She and her future husband, Charlie Soap, organized a self-help water line in Bell, Oklahoma. Men, women, and children worked together to install an 18-mile public water system in order to bring clean water into their homes. By 1983, she was the Deputy Principal Chief of the Cherokee Nation, and on December 5, 1985, she was sworn in as Principal Chief of the Cherokee Nation. As chief, she initiated several projects focused on education and healthcare, overseeing the construction of new schools, job training centers, health clinics, community development, and an award-winning housing and water project in low-income communities. Number 4, remain steadfast. When a male delegate made a comment that the Cherokee Nation would be the laughingstock of all the tribes because a woman was their chief, Chief Mankiller remained steadfast. She understood that tribal sovereignty is a sacred trust and asserted it is our duty to always remember and speak for those who cannot speak for themselves. Because of her steadfastness, she met with Presidents Reagan, Bush, and Clinton to present critical tribal issues. In 1998, Chief Mankiller was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian award in the U.S. by President Bill Clinton, and was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame because of her commitment to a brighter future for all. Number 5, be generous. Overcoming poverty, sexism, racism, and illness, Chief Mankiller was always generous with her time, her talents, and her material resources. Chief Mankiller served on the boards of the Ford Foundation, Ms. Foundation, and the 7th Generation Fund. As the guardian of the heritage, Chief Mankiller presented more than 100 lectures on the challenges facing Indigenous and women in the 21st century. She retired from public life in 1995 due to battles with constant illnesses, and on April 6, 2010, Chief Mankiller walked on, and upon hearing of her passing, Indigenous communities throughout the world lit fires on mountaintops to lead her on her journey. Okay, leaders, we've come to the end of the session for this week, and because you stuck around, here's your bonus for staying with us until the end. Bravery is a requisite. Knowing the strong role of Cherokee women in the history of the Cherokee Nation helped Chief Mankiller understand that despite gender, race, or illness, bravery is a requisite because life in your tribe demands it. More importantly, Chief Mankiller taught us that our lives and our future are for us to decide. Chief Mankiller broke the trail for all of us to follow, and she remains one of the most respected leaders of all time. times. If you are a woman with a desire to lead, we invite you to join us in creating real change in our communities and in the world. Everything we have learned as corporate, nonprofit, and social enterprise leaders has been crafted into the Women's Executive Leadership Program. The Women's Executive Leadership Program is the course you have been waiting for, and now it is here. Go to alliancetx.org and enroll today. Use the promo code WEALTH$50 to waive the registration fee. What an incredibly brave and amazing woman. Before we dive into our discussion here, let me just unmute our guest. Let's see. Before we dive into the discussion, for those of you who have just joined us, I would like to introduce our esteemed guest to you today, Chief Cheryl Smith of the Gina Band of Choctaw Indians. They are one of 3 federally recognized Choctaw tribes in the United States, and the tribe is based in LaSalle, Catahoula, and Grant parishes in Louisiana. Chief Smith was instrumental in helping the tribe receive federal recognition in 1995, and she was elected as the first woman chief in 1998. Because of the tribe's vast economic and community development projects, Chief Smith is a very wise businesswoman who is knowledgeable in administration, the construction and hospitality industries, as well as negotiation and collaboration. As a sovereign government, the tribe strives to improve the well-being of its tribal members and those of future generations. So thank you, Chief Smith, for being with us today. We know that you are very busy, so we appreciate your presence. We also have another very busy woman with us today, Pamela Iron. She is the Executive Director of the American Indian Resource Center, incorporated in the Institute for Native Justice. Pam, who is Cherokee and Laguna Pueblo, has 40 years. You must have started when you were 2, as our founding president would say. Years of experience working in Indian country, developing programs and assisting communities in discovering their needs and facilitating problem solving through guided community planning. She has served as the executive director for 2 nonprofits, and she was the health director and the chief of staff for Chief Wilma Mankiller. So Pam, thank you for joining us today. And we want to thank our audience also for being with us as we discuss the life and the legacy of Chief Mankiller. I would like for our discussion to be as organic and holistic as possible, so please feel free to comment and even ask questions of your own. Chief Smith, I would like to start with you, though, because like Chief Mankiller, you are the principal chief of the Gina Band of Choctaw Indians. You are also a trailblazer, and you have many community and economic development accomplishments. In what ways does Chief Mankiller's story and accomplishments inspire you? I'm sorry, Chief Smith, you're still on mute. Are you getting a prompt to unmute?
There you go.
Now we can hear you now.
Thank you for asking me to be on this panel. It is an honor, especially when we're talking about Wilma Mankiller. I guess I'll go back a little bit and let you know that I've worked for my tribe over 40 years also, and we started trying to get federal recognition in the late 70s. And it took us almost 20 years to get recognized as a federal Indian tribe. And we were doing a lot of things that tribes do to receive recognition. And I know at one point, in those my younger years, we heard about this woman chief from the Cherokees, and I think her name is really outstanding, and that was something that you wouldn't forget when you heard about Chief Mankiller. So I've heard about her for many years, and how she came and rose and was able to take charge and lead her people to better life, better benefits, just all the things that leaders want for their people. And like I never have had the privilege to meet Chief Mankiller, but like I say, she does have a history that follows her and will continue to follow her and her legacy. I can relate to being the first tribal leader, woman tribal leader in a tribe. We've always had male leadership in our tribe. And then in 1998, I was elected the first woman chief of our tribe. And I can understand the things that happened to her, whether it was threats or, lots of actions that weren't nice. Median woman leader. Um, I think it was an adjustment for our tribe to have a woman leader. And it wasn't just to my tribal people, but I think it was for the community in the state, nationwide. The country was not used to women being leaders. So it was something that she trailblazed in, very proud of her. I know that I've had situations also, in the year 2000, we were fighting the state of Louisiana for some things, and we had a meeting with the governor. And I went in to see the governor about some things. And when I went in there, he looked at me and he said, I didn't know a woman could be an Indian chief. And this is what a governor would say to a woman leader coming in to see him. And my very quick response to him was, Governor, in this day and time, a woman can be anything she wants to be. She can be a doctor, a lawyer, or so it wasn't just with your tribal people. It was the community that you lived in. It was the state, and it was the nation where it was something new for women to be tribal leaders. So I always heard about her. She inspired me that women could do those things just as well as men. And then I was elected tribal chief. And since 1998, our tribe has continually had women leaders. Uh, and we have elections the end of this year. And then we'll see what happens from there. But like I said, we've done a lot of great things under women leadership. And I'm very proud to say right now that and this I think is pretty rare in India, I have a full council of nothing but women. My tribal council is made up of 4 women and myself as tribal chief. And in Indian country, that doesn't happen a lot. I know there are lots of women on tribal councils, and but I do see it more often now. I'm a member of the USET organization, and there are several women leaders, and I think that's something that the world is getting used to. That women can step up, and they can be awesome leaders. They can be forceful, brave, steadfast, all those things that Wilma was. I know in our recognition process, we started in the late 70s, and we did not get federal recognition till 1995. I know many times I just wanted to give up because, we know we're Indian. Why do we have to wait on the federal government to tell us that we're Indian? But my mother was a tribal elder, a very wise woman. And she said, you don't give up. You fight for our people because our people need these things. And we had heard from the other tribes in Louisiana. There are 3 other federal tribes in Louisiana, but there are benefits that you can have for your people if you are a federal tribe. So recognition, I think, is one of my greatest accomplishments. even though it took us almost 20 years, without federal recognition, we would have never seen any of the prosperity or the benefits from our people that they now get. And it's housing, education, health benefits. It's all these things that we never had for our people. And it's a good day now. It's a good time to be a member of the Gina Band of Choctaws. We're a very, very small tribe. We only have 408 members, but we're family one way or the other. We're all distantly related to each other. And I think when you take up this cause that it's for your family, it's something that you don't give up because you know you're fighting for your people and your family. And all these years have been worth all the trials and tribulations that I have gone through as a leader to create businesses and to create benefits and all these things. It's been a long, hard road, but every bit of it's been worth it. And I always heard that anything good wasn't easy to get. We've got great things now because it's very, very hard to come by. So I do believe that she is a legacy that I hope younger tribal council women that are serving now in tribal councils realize that they can at some point in their lives get the knowledge from their elders. Listen to your elders because they know the things, they know the cultures, the traditions. It's just not having a degree on the wall. It's about knowing your people and knowing what they want, what their needs are, what their life has been like. You have to know your people to know what you're fighting for and what your goals are that you want to get accomplished. So I would just suggest that all the young women leaders out there just learn from your elders. They're very important. And when they're gone, there's so much wealth of information and history and customs, language, all these things that are being lost across Indian country. That's very, very important in who we are and keeping us together, bonded as a tribe and a family.
Thank you for that, Chief Smith, and thank you for giving us the courage, but also the nudge to know our elders and learn from them, but to not give up fighting for our people. So thank you for that. And you said so many things that I want to come back to, but I want to go now to Pam and ask Pam, you were recruited and you worked for Chief Mankiller as her chief of staff, as well as the executive director, I believe, of the health department. What was she like? And can you share any favorite stories of her with us?
Well, yes, OCO. Oh, I'm so glad to be here. And as I was thinking about this, there's so much that I would like to share and kind of like where do I start is sharing about Chief Manueller. Of course, she's all near and dear to my heart and still guides me in my work. I have met her as a grant writer. She was a grant writer for the tribe, and we went to a meeting when it was the first Indian Child Welfare Act were being set up, and there were grants to be able to write and to set up a child welfare program. And so I met her then. Through the years, we would go to conferences, meet, and then one day I decided I want to run for chief. No, excuse me, I wanted to run for council. And that was when she had the deputy chief and then moved up to be the chief and then ran again. And so I said, I really feel like at the time I was running the Indian Health Clinic, had established that program in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I said, in order to run for council, I really here and emerged, although I had helped a lot of people in Tulsa and we had Cherokees there, I really need to be more in touch with the government. And I asked her if I could volunteer. She had any volunteer things that I could do for the tribe. I wanted to do that. And so about 2 weeks later, she called me and she said, I want you to volunteer for me. I want you to come to work for me. And that was kind of a surprise and shock. She said, we're getting ready to build 3 new clinics. And she said, I need someone to help me do that. So she wanted me to come for as the healthcare director. So I did that. And as we worked together, we built the Chief Man Clinic. We also built the Redbird Smith Clinic, and then one other clinic. And just to say that the work with Wilma, she's a person that impressed everyone. And sort of like what Chief Smith was saying, is that she really listened to her people. She felt that was one of the main things that she needed to do. She embraced the communities. And she, in 1987, when she ran for office, she made 2 promises in the campaign. And one was to bring the Cherry people into the 21st century on their own terms. And what she meant, and I'll go into what she meant by that in a little bit, but also to run an honest and professional tribal government, which was really important now, well, then and now. And what we figured out that through the years she meant about on their own terms, she was really talking about understanding sovereignty. She's really talking about the connection that we are sovereign nations, and that we have a one-one relationship with the U.S. government, because we're the only people that are mentioned in the Constitution. And our relationship is with Congress, and that it has to be a government to government relationship. Well, back when she came on board, and now, and the other piece that she term now we decolonization, but she really looked at it as we need to go back and study our ancestral ways. And some of that was the generosity that was talked about in that, the connectedness of our people together, and that the term is called Gadu, and in Cherokee language, and it's that we work together for the good of all. And those foundations of her leadership, that she loved to go out in the communities. That's what it said, ask people we needed. And we would go constantly to the communities, and she would spend hours with individuals, and she never was in a hurry. That was one of the things I admired so much about her. And she'd go to birthday parties, she'd go to just every kind of thing, because she wanted to really understand the needs. She really enjoyed people. It was one of the hallmarks of her work. And she also focused on 2 things. It was health and education, and those were really important. But I kind of like to go back to the sovereignty issue, because some of the things in the writings and the legacy that there's been several films of her that they really bring out the fact that she really, in a real patient way, worked on sovereignty. She and several of the chiefs at the time, they went out to in country, and they held these listening sessions with all the tribal leaders, and everybody got at the table, and they would go around and discuss what is sovereignty. How do you exercise sovereignty? Before this, it was kind of like people would say, they would say it, but they didn't know how to use it. I mean, we would say, we're a sovereign nation, but what does that mean? And so through this process of listening and gathering this information, then the piece of legislation was put to Congress, and it was the Self-Governance Act. We had the Self-Determination Act, but it didn't go far enough. And this self-governance, it wasn't a relationship was with Congress, with government, rather than all these agencies. Now we still work with the agencies, but we're able to determine what our individual tribe need. So I really think that she laid the groundwork for that. And that's why today the Cherokee Nation has the health facilities that they have, because we were able to determine the types of services that we really needed. And I guess some of the stories about Wilma is she was really a lot of fun to be with. She enjoyed life, and she would always start out. Oh gosh, sorry. She would always start out telling a story about she married Charlie Soap, and that when she married him, she decided, and he decided that he could keep his maiden name. I thought was interesting. So she would always tell little jokes that, and she would, one of the things that Charlie was what we call a speaker. He was a fluent speaker speaking, and Wilma was learning language, and so sometimes she would try to, she would be speaking in Cherokee, and our language is tricky that sometimes you can say a word and it's the wrong word. And Charlie had been teaching her these phrases to say, and she said, and she was in this big auditorium, and when she was about to get that part of her speech, well, she saw him heading toward the door. And he was afraid that of what she was going to say, she might say it wrong. And she said, thank goodness she's right. And here he came back. He started walking back and stayed in her speech. But just one of the other things too is that Cherokees, we were a matriarchal society. And one of the things Selma exhibited is that a man and a woman's relationship, they were partners. One was higher than the other. They had partnerships, and they had their certain roles that they did. And this was historically the makeup of how our Cherokee people and most tribes were. We had a beloved woman. And many people say that Wilma was our modern day beloved woman. And our beloved woman was in the village. She actually made a lot of decisions. The chiefs and the different men would come to her for advice. And she was chosen by the people. And also a little known fact is that all the women elected the men to the council. And so there was that relationship and balance. The men sat in council and made decisions, but they also had to take advice, or did take advice from the beloved woman. And then if the women were the ones that voted, so they could vote out. And so there was that. It was kind of interesting. I wish we we are trying to bring some of those things back in practice, but I do think that we she exhibited this, she actually practiced it, and I think that it had a big impact in our families, in our community. And I'll stop there now that I'm other questions.
That was great. Thank you for sharing that, Pam. I want to go back to something that Chief Smith said about overcoming opposition and adversity. And we know that Chief Mankiller overcame so much opposition, especially as she was trying to bring this 18-mile public water system to Bell, Oklahoma. We also know that Charlie Soap, her husband, was instrumental in helping her to make that happen. But she also had opposition pushing forward her ideas about healthcare as well as education. But she believed in this spirit of unity and about people coming together to work and help each other. So, Pam, you've talked about that. Chief Smith, you've talked about it. But why is it important for all of us to care about the communities in which we live in? Chief Smith, can you tell us why it's important?
Well, I've always lived in this parish all my life. Gina, Louisiana is home to me. Our Indian settlement was on the outer skirts of town when my mother was growing up. At that time, Indians couldn't go to the white schools. We didn't go to the black schools. For a short time, we had a little Indian school called the Indian Hittite School. So adversity started very young with our people. But, that is the past. Those things. My mama was able to start the first grade when she was 16 years old in a white school. The first year she got promoted to the third grade because she had a little bit of education at the independent school. Well, then later on, we were admitted into white schools, but those things happened and they're the past. You can't look back. I believe you have to look forward. And I finished high school here in the school. This community is important to me, even to this day. As a tribe in the tribal council, we're very active in this community. I'm on several boards throughout the parish. We donate to just various things that our community know that they need, whether it's ballparks, the town's dog pound. I mean, things that are important to us. Sports. If the children are in playoffs for state or something with baseball, we donate thousands of dollars to help them be able to go on these trips. We're just, I consider us a partner in the community that we live in. I feel like any person in the community, whether it be the sheriff or the mayor, they would all say that the Gina Banner Choctaws is a very good neighbor to this community that we live in. Our native children go to these schools here in this parish. We go to the churches in this parish. So being part of a community is very, very important to me. And we have strived to be a good neighbor. And I believe it's very important that you do that. And I'm very proud of the fact that we are proud of this community and we are a great part of this community.
Yes, you are. You are very instrumental and great part of the community. Pam, what are your thoughts on that? Why is it important for us to care about the communities that we live in?
Well, that's where we grow. That's where we connect with each other. And here in Cherokee Nation, there are over 200 communities. And that's sometimes when I came to work, I didn't realize how they define communities. It's around a school or it might be around a stomp ground. So but the individuals, you might not think it's much, but it's very near and dear to your heart, and that's their community that they're from, and they have that connectedness. So I think we have to look at, you can't when you plan programs, you can't necessarily do cookie cutter. You have to look at what the needs are. But one of the things, to overcome obstacles, Wilma was very tenacious. And I think women that in leadership, they may not realize that these are things that they build on to be there, but he had that never give up attitude. If she didn't go this route, well, she would go another route. And she was patient. She, I know that sometimes, everybody feels defeated for a little bit, but yet she would go right back to it. And a lot of it, she had a major car wreck and wasn't supposed to live basically, and they never thought she would walk. And with that in her background, she ended up, nobody ever knew how it affected her, because she did walk. She was able to lead an very active life, was able to overcome all these physical things and keep in mind. And I think that the only way that could have been achieved was because she had so much love and compassion for people, and always kept a good mind. She would tell me and others that she talked to the elders. That was one of the first thing. Oh, the other thing, she always sought her elders. She always sought out medicine people to talk to. She would go and visit them, and they would tell her, and they would go, be of mind. And if you're of good mind, then things happen. You have to be positive. And in some of her writing, she talks about every day is a day, and that's how she wake up. You have to practice these things. You have to say these things and believe them. And the people around her became positive like that too. I think that's how she overcame a lot of the obstacles. And the community is really backbone of the total community. And just like Chief Smith said, the Cherokee Nation are good partners with our non-Indian communities, and we're really kind of blended a lot here. It wasn't always that way, but it's more blending than previously. And we just got recognized as a reservation. We were always kind of like, we were the tribally historical lands, but recently through the Supreme Court, the Cherokee Nation is now a reservation, which really is more of a legal thing than anything, but it's more recognition of our sovereignty. I guess I could put it that way.
Well, congratulations on that victory. I would like to go back to the fact that here we have this woman who is in power in the 1980s, and she faced all of these challenges. She overcame them with grace. Pam, you just mentioned the fact that she was in a car accident and she wasn't supposed to walk, but she overcame so many other illnesses as well. How do we protect her legacy? Chief Smith, you want to, or go ahead, Pam.
Oh, that's okay. Go ahead, Chief Smith.
I'm going to defer that to you. You knew Wilma a lot better than I did, so I'm going to let you answer that question first. I want to learn from you.
I think that we have to of the things that I'm going to do is, and she and I actually had planned to do this, um, we're going to do a Women's Leadership Institute. And now, I'm going to call it the Mankiller Leader Institute. I have gotten permission from her family to do this. That's still on my plate, and I plan to do something of that nature just to get it started, because all those things that, Wilma loved to debate. She loved discussion, and she wanted to always teach people, because a lot of times people don't know how to debate. They, if someone disagrees with them, well, they get mad. But she really wanted people to dialogue. And that's how if you dialogue, and if you learn, like I think you were talking about collaboration.
Mhm.
Chief Smith was talking about those things that she has skin in. Those are the things that Wilma embraced. And I think if we can really continue to embrace these kinds of things, that uh, we will, her legacy will go forward. I know that Cherokee Nation actually has recently passed a law that is named the Chief Mankiller and Charlie Soap Water Act. And it's because it's to improve, what they started, that's a legacy, and build on improving the water of our nation. And so those are the kinds of things that I think are really important to do.
In our final moments here, what do you think, as viewers, as emerging and aspiring women leaders, what is it that what advice would you give to us?
Well, I'll go first and say my advice is that, and Wilma would many times tribal women from other tribes would come talk with her when they would get elect councilwomen. And she said she always advised them that they needed to pick one thing that they were passionate about, and always keep that in the forefront and work on that one thing, and then other things would fall in place. That would be one thing, that as far as being a leader. And another one is be tenacious. Tenacious, patience. And what I feel like Wilma did was that she laid a lot of groundwork. She planted a lot of seeds. And like we have a song that we sing when we plant, and it just says, here I make a footprint, and you drop a seed for a seed to grow. She made many, many footprints, and planted many, many seeds, and we can see every nation, the growth of it. But I do feel that you can just look at the impact that she had on other tribes and working with them, that is, the seeds have grown. And I think it's important for individuals to really, it's almost like never give up, always, and encourage young people, and encourage them to do things with tribe and share with them information as an elder. I think that's so important. Sometimes you think, oh, the kids aren't interested, they're not listening, but they really are. They will listen to you. They want that one-on-one relationship, and just one or two words sometimes makes a big difference to a young child.
Thank you. Chief Smith?
Well, I guess I would first say that Chief Mankiller, she broke the glass ceiling for all of us, all the women, younger women leaders out in Indian country. She showed us that you can do it, women can do it. And I would just say that for the women out there in Indian country, you have to be, you have to sometimes lead with a big heart. You know, you have to have a level head. Um,
Mhm.
come when you want them to come. If you think something's going to take a year, well, I'm sorry, it may take 3 years. It may take 5 years. Things come, you just have to be patient. Um, always be humble and kind. I love that song, and I think that has a lot of meaning. You always, no matter where you go or who you think you are, you remember where you came from. We all came from humble beginnings, and no matter where we are in this day and time, I think that we should never forget where we came from. Um, even as a leader with full council, we sometimes don't all agree, and you have to learn that. You have to learn to agree to disagree. We all want the same thing. It's all about teamwork. Uh, and you have to have teamwork, because if you've got one side tugging one way and one going the other way, you just never get anything done or anything off the ground. So it's just very important that a person is, they don't have to be highly educated. That's good if they are, but as long as they are a person with a good heart, a sound mind, uh, and they care for their people, they can go and take their tribe many places that tribes need to go in Indian country. Uh, and I think that that's about it. I'm not a real educated woman, uh, but most of my wisdom comes from years and years of working with the tribe, visiting other tribes. We so many times we have not had to reinvent the wheel. It's out there in Indian. If there's something that your people want and you want to try to get that for your community, networking is very important for leaders out there in Indian country, because there's so many tribes out there. Uh, just network. If there's some goal or aspirations that you have, look around, because you find that somebody has done that somewhere, and it just makes things easier for you. Very important. So I think those are some of my suggestions for anybody that's thinking about going into the leadership role for the tribe. It's an amazing ride. I can tell you mine has been an amazing ride.
Thank you, Chief Smith and Pam, for joining us today and just sharing your wisdom and knowledge, your own personal wisdom and knowledge, but also the wisdom and knowledge and legacy of Chief Mankiller with us. And we want to thank our viewers too for spending this time with us. I know that I've learned a lot about not only Chief Mankiller, but just some things that I will take with me, and know that I'll stand a little bit taller tonight, as well as for the rest of the week, as I think about this conversation that we've had. So I'd like to remind our viewers that if you haven't subscribed to this series, there's still time to do it. You can go to alliancetx.org and you can go back and watch any of the videos, as well as the panel discussions. And today's discussion will be loaded by Thursday afternoon to the alliancetx.org website. I'd also like to remind you, if you would like to learn more about Alliance for Greater Works, the series, or how we develop women leaders throughout the world, or if your company or organization is looking for a place to sponsor or develop multicultural women leaders, you can learn how we can do just that at alliancetx.org. And if you know of any aspiring women leaders looking for good leadership development programming, please share our work with them. Again, I hope you enjoyed today's discussion on Chief Wilma Mankiller. We will see you next week as we discuss the life and legacy of Patsy Mink, the first woman of color and the first Asian American elected to Congress. Goodbye and blessings to you all.